Hey, Brian Castle here. I'm the founder of Clarity Flow. Today I've got a great conversation with John Meese. He is a coach and course creator and author of multiple books. You can find all of his stuff at johnmeese.com, and we really cover a whole wide range of, what it's like to run a business like his. John has a lot of experience in just the industry of selling courses and writing newsletters and funnels. From his days working and really running Platform University with Michael Hyatt for many years, which reached so many people, and then going out on his own to build and sell his own books and courses. And, it was a really interesting conversation, and also getting into some software stuff along the way. We kind of compared and contrasted some of like the, what it's like to run these different types of businesses, who his ideal customers are, and who they are not, and how to like build trust with an audience, and how to, what he talks about offering a 10x level of value, and really kind of like not being afraid to offer that sort of promise. I think he called it a 10x promise. You'll hear more in the conversation. Well, without further ado, here is a conversation with John Meese. Enjoy. John Meese, great to connect with you again.
Good to connect with you live after exclusively talking on Clarity Flow before now.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually the first time we're talking in person. Not in person,
yes.
like,
IRL,
across the internet,
right.
but yeah.
Synchronous. I get synchronous. This is a synchronous conversation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing that there have been several people who I have developed like pretty long relationships with only async, and like having like deep conversations using video and everything. And in a couple of those situations, like haven't even met them until like about a year in. So,
wow.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I used to own a software company, which I've since sold, and we did have some live calls, but my business partner and I, we didn't meet in person for like 4 years, I think it was. It was like the first time we met in person. It was like, wow, you're a lot shorter than I remembered, or than I thought.
It's always that. It's always
height. That's the thing that everyone gets wrong. But yeah, so we ran that company together for like 4 years before we met in person. We still did live calls, but yes, it is a wonderful, magical internet world we live in.
It's amazing. I mean, my current team and my previous businesses, yeah, same deal. We never met in person. There was, what was interesting, my previous business was, we'll get into the whole story and everything in a minute here, but my previous business was Audience Ops, and we were like a blog content as a service, kind of like a productized service. Team of like 25 people, probably 20 of them were US based in different places, and then 5 were in the Philippines.
Okay.
The only people I've met in person were the 5 in the Philippines. Like
Oh, interesting.
I traveled to the Philippines
Plot
3
twist.
times. My wife has family in the Philippines, and so I got to meet them. But like all the Americans, even some who lived like within an hour of where I live, just went like 6 years on that business without meeting in person. Amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so I want to hear all about your business and story, building up your coaching and teaching, consulting. I don't know if you call it consulting. I guess it's more like coaching and authorship. We're going to get into all of it at johnmeese.com. The way that I like to start these interviews is, instead of like just tell me what you do, like maybe you can describe it from the perspective of one of your clients or a recent client or two.
Okay, sure.
How do they find you online, discover you, build trust in you, subscribe to your stuff, and then get into your programs? Like what does it look like from their perspective?
Yeah. Okay. So let me think about a real life example here. Well, the examples I'm thinking about are unusual. So let me think of like a more usual example. But so there's a woman named Jenna who recently became a client where she heard me on a podcast. Surprise. That's something that I do sometimes. I actually used to have my own podcast. I've had 2 over the last decade, neither of which I publish new episodes on now, but I do still love talking to interesting people and about things that I care about. And so I still make it a habit of getting on other podcasts as a guest. There's times when I've been really strategic about it. This was a conversation time where you reached out to me, and that's kind of how it is lately. It's more
Same
of that.
Here.
Yeah. But what I've done, like book launches though, like I've done book like podcast tours where I did like 50 interviews, and so that's a whole other thing. But
I want to hear all about that. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, so Jenna she heard me on, I think it was on Rory Vaden's podcast, and she just heard my interview and she really liked it. And so she sent me, at the end of Rory Vaden's podcast, I mentioned a free resource. She downloaded it, but she replied to my welcome email and she was like, I just heard you on this podcast. I really appreciated it. Thanks so much for what you shared. And then I have an email newsletter that, since we're all friends here, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. It's all automated. And so when someone subscribes, it's what my friend Brennan Dunn would call this, I think, a shadow newsletter.
Sure.
And so it's, I think of it differently, but that's not the point here. The point is that they get automatic emails every day for about a week that's value add of like teaching something, a core part of my philosophy, what I teach. And in there, it's also mentioning my products. It's not really like a hard pitch, though. It's more like introducing someone to my world with the different products that I have, different ways I can help you, different key concepts. And then after that, I have some emails that are more like traditional sales emails and some that just ask a question. And so this is one, like Jenna replied to one where I just asked a question of like, hey, would you be interested in, working together? Well, no, rather, I think I said, would you be interested in working with me to build a group coaching program with a plug-and-play client creation machine? And she replied and she was like, yes, tell me more. And I said, tell me a little bit about you. And then I said, I think you're a good fit for my program called Group Coach Bootcamp. And then she paid $500 to attend that. It's an all-day workshop where I kind of help someone construct a group coaching program from scratch. Well, they have to have some expertise, so it's not truly from scratch. Yeah. The term, has a lot of
I saw the headline on one of your programs, like is it like sell your expertise or sell your
so my newsletter is called Sell Your Smarts. And
Sell
so
Your
that's
Smarts.
Yeah. And that's becoming my core brand, beyond just me as John Meese. I've been running an online education business in some capacity for about a decade, and so I've had different name, it's always John Meese of Thrive School or Sell Your Smarts. Or there's always some sort of brand attached to that, even though it's still me at the helm. Because interests change.
There are so many little rabbit holes we can dive in here.
Yes.
I guess just starting with the email newsletter.
Yeah.
I mean Brennan's stuff is amazing.
He's awesome.
I'm in a mastermind group with him for
cool.
going back many years now. It's kind of crazy. He or just in that idea of an evergreen newsletter, like you say that it's fully automated, but you still wrote the content at some point.
Totally. And just to be clear,
you created, you just sort of lined it up in so if a new person signs up today, they're getting all the stuff that you've built into this sequence over the years, right?
Yeah, and I'm right. I run a newsletter actually every week, and so the people who've been on my email list the longest are getting the newest newsletter. But when I was doing it before, the traditional newsletter way, where you just write an email and you send it, it just really wasn't a great user experience, because if somebody who just subscribes is hearing about some advanced sales strategy that I'm teaching or some new way to design a program, and they're like, what? I mean, it was actually, I know this because I've done this before. I used to, years ago, run a giant business called Platform University for a guy named Michael Hyatt. And so I was the dean of Platform University, had an email list of over 100,000 subscribers. My name was in the from of every email. And we had built out an automated newsletter with a little help from Brennan. We did bring him in as a consultant during part of that. But I did most of it, and I did all the writing. And we had this still to this day. And since then, that business has been sold. It's passed through hands a couple times. If you go subscribe to their newsletter today, you will get an email from me that I wrote many years ago. And then you will get an email every week for a year and a half before the automation runs out.
Yeah.
And
I love that concept in general. Yeah. Obviously, it's good to optimize the subscribers and the funnel and all that. But I used to do a similar thing with my newsletter. I've sort of abandoned all the audience building stuff I just got so involved in software now. But But a few years back, I was doing that, and the one thing that really drove me to use that tactic was if I ever came out with a new article, which I spend many hours coming up with the idea and writing it and publishing it, it got to me that I would send it out to my newsletter, and then only those people would ever really see it, and then it would sort of get buried in my archives and all that. So then I started picking out my best of the greatest hits from the last several years, my best articles, and lining them up in this evergreen sequence.
It's basically exactly what happened, because when I helped Michael Hyatt sell that business, and then I was running my own blog and all that kind of stuff, I was like, well, it's just me, so I won't do the whole automated thing. I'll just write a newsletter. But then I had somebody email me, and she later became a client, but her name's Rebecca, and she emailed me, and she was just like, okay, look, I think I like this article you wrote, but what the heck is a flagship product? What the heck is a gateway product? And what's a membership product? And this there's this terminology that I was just using that for me had become so just a core part of what I teach, that I didn't even realize how confusing it was to her. And so it was actually helpful I was like, thank you. I'm going to go back and fix that. And so
I want to get into your line of the landscape of everything, but you bring up a really good point. One thing I always like to think about whenever like writing a new article or newsletter or something, I would try to be speaking to like myself from a few years ago, because there is all this terminology that like if you're in it every day, it might seem like, oh, that's so obvious, everybody knows that, or I'm not like reinventing the wheel here, but like
Totally.
every single day there are new people coming into the space, coming online, even just like young folks like kind of growing up and growing into the industry or whatever it might be, who are just discovering any concept it might be like for the first time. So it's a really interesting thing.
Well, I think what you just said is true in general, Brian, but I think specifically for my audience, because I'm helping people. So what I do is I help smart professionals turn their wisdom into wealth by building a thriving online education business. And so what that means is they typically have already built some level of professional accomplishment, either as a one-on-one coach or as a therapist or an attorney or a CFO. They've got some other professional background, and so they're not like, fresh out of college trying to decide what to do with their life. They typically have years of experience under their belt, and then they're kind of stepping into this world of like digital marketing and online education products. And it's completely overwhelming to someone who's not used to being a beginner, because they've been a professional, they've been an expert now for a while. That's really challenging. And so that's something I think in general, yes, be very careful about not letting the curse of knowledge confuse your language. But specifically with the people I'm helping, it's like doubly important, because these are incredibly smart people who feel dumb when they read blog posts about podcasts or webinars or deadline funnels and all these things that like, just if you haven't been swimming in it for years, it just doesn't make sense. And so I spend a lot of time trying to make those concepts clear.
So like what is like basically like the lineup of everything that you currently offer? I mean, what I see just kind of navigating around johnmeese.com, obviously your blog is public for anyone to read, and then you have your newsletter that you can sign up for. I see a couple of books that I want to hear about. There's the accelerator, the flagship. Like, how does it all sort of fit together? And so if a new person, or typically like on average, new person who comes to your website, maybe enters your newsletter, what's typically like the first actual product or thing that they are presented with or engaging with?
Yeah, well, the first product is probably, I don't know if that's the right word, but the first thing that people usually go through, no matter what way they come in, is I send people now through a crash course. And this is a free, it's sort of like the pre-newsletter content. So, and if you want to check this out, you could just go to sellyoursmartsonline.com. And it is an opt-in, but it's a free crash course where I introduce people to the products. What I do, I practice what I preach, because it's a little, I'm my sister, who's much younger than me, she's 17. She introduces, when her friends were like, what does your brother do for a living? He was like, well, I guess he's a meta creator. Like, as a creator who like teaches people how to be creators. And I was like, okay, I guess that's true.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I do have to practice what I preach, because I do a lot of teaching business models of which products you should have. And so I'm happy to explain the products I have, but also I think it's helpful maybe to put them in that category of the first thing that I'm typically introducing people to is a gateway product. A gateway product, the way I think about it is typically it's a painless purchase that solves a real problem for your customer, or for your target customer. And so it's meant to be, not a huge amount of money. It's not designed to create cash. It's designed to create customers. And so the first example of that are my books. And those are the first things that I promote. So I've got 2 books that I've written. One is called Survive and Thrive: How to Build a Profitable Business in Any Economy.
I love this. You came prepared for the podcast. I love it.
Yeah. I exactly. And the other is called
This is what the pros do when you see them on the book tours. They've got it like on the bookshelf behind them, and like.
Yeah, I have that. This is actually the only 2 copies, because we just moved back from Puerto Rico. There's the only 2 copies of my 2 books that I have anywhere. So I just keep them on my desk now, so I can pull them up. But then, so my other book is called Always Be Teaching, and this is actually the only physical copy in existence, because I haven't finished the production of the paperback, but the ebook's been really popular. Nice. And that's 50 illustrated insights on how to grow your business by creating content online. And that's
I noticed that you're offering these, like, obviously through your website and through your newsletter, but also on Amazon. Are these like books that people sort of discover independently of you and your newsletter, and then come into your newsletter that way, or is it more the other way around? Like,
well, okay, so I want it to be a lot more people are finding the books and then finding me. Most of it right now is still people who find me then find my books. But the reason why I still use Amazon is, because the revenue share on Amazon is not great, and like there's a lot of things you can't control. But they still are the name of the game when it comes to discoverability for books. And so that's why I do still primarily do a lot of my distribution and sales through Amazon. So I do get some people who come in. In fact, one of my favorite reviews on my first book, Survive and Thrive, is actually by another guy named John Meese, who said he just Googled his name one day and was like, "What is this?" I wrote a book, and he read it, and he's like, "This is actually a pretty good book." And so,
That's great.
So obviously, there's at least one example of someone who found me from a Google search and then bought my book. But no, there's plenty of other people, and I do run some Amazon ads. That's not a major part of my business, but I think that's actually a good example, though, of how I think about gateway products. Is every dollar of revenue that I generate from a gateway product, like a book or a course or even my bootcamp, which I'll talk about, goes directly back into customer acquisition. So the way I approach it is, that was the way I teach as well, is to use a gateway product to build your customer list. And so that's one of the ways to avoid, the goal is that you create a flywheel where you're funding your own growth. And it's one of the ways to avoid the trap of paid advertising is typically that I know one study that I cited in my books is that they analyzed like billions of dollars of Facebook and Instagram ad revenue and found out that the average ad campaign on either Facebook or Instagram, after 6 months of optimizing, had a negative 50% ROI. Mm-hmm. In other words, people were spending $2 to make $1, which I call a bad deal. So I don't start out the gate with advertising, but that's what I use a gateway product for, is to fund a customer acquisition.
Got it. So just to clarify for folks here, you're selling a book or a course, mm-hmm. and using that revenue to put directly into ads that then send more people to that book. Well,
it might be ads. In this case, it is with the book, but the goal is customer acquisition, and so sometimes that means paying to sponsor a newsletter, or there's other things you could do. And so I do want to just clarify that. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes. So obviously that begs the question: well, how do you pay for groceries? How do you pay the bills? Because you still got to do that too. Sure. And that's why the other two products come in. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's great for someone who's teaching online to have multiple gateway products. So I have 2 books. I'm working on a third. I have sold different courses from time to time. I'm working on a new one right now that I'll be releasing soon. But again, this is going to be a course that's it's like $100, and it'll be a Sell Your Smarts masterclass. And it's essentially it's a massive value add for what is objectively a small amount of money when you consider the value you receive. And the goal is to earn someone's trust to become a customer, and then also to create some ad spend essentially.
Yeah, and so then these other products that are intended to be more I guess profitable and how do you what do you consider, if anything, your flagship product mm-hmm. versus a line of different products that people can?
Yeah, so I have one flagship product, and that is my 6-figure flagship accelerator. And so now again, it's kind of a meta flagship because it's a flagship about how to launch a flagship and earn 6 figures per year mm-hmm. from that. But a flagship product could be a lot of things. I mean, my favorite type of flagship product, which is one of the reasons why you and I get along so well, is a group coaching program. Mm-hmm. And so most of my clients, I'm teaching them how to take their expertise and turn that into some sort of group coaching program that they can turn around and then sell. And so in my flagship program, I take 10 clients per quarter, and they pay $10,000 each to come through a group coaching program that I teach, where I teach them advanced sales strategies to both attract the target customer, nurture that relationship, and then sell them into their own flagship program. And so while my program itself is a premium program and it's very limited, it can only take on 10 clients at a time, at the same time, go back to that name real quick, 6-figure flagship accelerator, the goal is designed to actually help them earn $100,000 a year, or at least $10,000 a month is usually what we end up focusing on, as that, the result and the outcome of that. And so even then, I'm trying to 10x value, that if somebody's paying me $10,000, I'm trying to help them earn $100,000.
Yep.
So that's my flagship product, and that's really how I fund my lifestyle. And then the other things I do, membership products, is what I would do to fund core operations. And typically other businesses that I've worked in as a consultant before, that's also what we would set up is, and this whole model of a gateway, a membership, and a flagship, those are the 3 core products that I recommend, and that's what I practice as well.
Got it. So the gateway is sort of the low cost kind of fund your all marketing spend. And then you have a membership product, which is sort of like an ongoing recurring revenue, pay for the operations, and then the flagship product, which is intended to be the profit center of the business. Yeah,
and so generally, I mean, this is maybe oversimplification if there's any accountants listening.
Do you do any sort of one-on-one or upper level beyond that, or it ends there?
Generally, no. Mm-hmm. So I don't take on any one-on-one clients anymore. And that's one of the core principles that I teach at the beginning is to be successful in turning your wisdom into wealth and building an online education business, you have to stop selling your time. And that's one of the first core principles that I teach. And so to do that, it's okay, I'm actually rolling out a new one-on-one offer right now, but it's using Clarity Flow, and it's an on-demand coaching product that's actually a subscription. It's actually a membership product but it's essentially like people just paying a monthly fee. And I know of a couple other friends of mine who've done that on Clarity Flow and have had success with that. And so like that's why I'm doing it. And so yes, I mean actually after not having one-on-one clients for a long time, I'm reopening that, but it's totally different because now it's asynchronous. Now they're paying a monthly fee to be able to like send questions and get feedback and coaching from me, and I can respond on my own schedule. So I've done last time
or
I did
even
one-on-one.
respond with like template stuff that you've
actually
already built into your library, right?
Well,
it kind of goes back to that idea of like the evergreen newsletter, but now in a video coaching form, if you will.
Well, and that's exactly how I'm building it out. Is I'm using the Clarity Flow library to kind of map out, like, essentially, I'm going to sell on-demand coaching as just a coaching product, but I'm planning to already create resources and drip them out week by week of like new trainings and templates and tools for my coaching clients. And so I'm treating it like a membership, but clients are experiencing it like a one-on-one product. And so it's not like a community. That itself is not a community product. I have a 7-figure school mastermind, which is a high ticket mastermind on the back end of my accelerator program, which is recurring revenue as well. And so now all of a sudden I've got essentially 2 memberships, but one is very clearly the goal, which is like you want to get to the 7-figure school mastermind, but that's also expensive and exclusive. And then the on-demand coaching is available to anybody as an alternative that's much more affordable. And so, yeah.
Super impressive, just kind of putting all these pieces together. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot to someone who's like listening in and maybe not familiar with all your stuff. But you know, it's really impressive.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Let's see. One thing I want to unpack before I want to go into your backstory and how you got here. But before I get into all that, I just kind of unpacking some of the product stuff on the flagship program. Like you talked about how it's specifically aimed at a 6-figure income or 10,000 a month. You know, I think a lot of people looking at that would question, like, is this going to live up to its promise, right? Like, am I really going to get that ROI, right? How do you actually handle that personally, and how do you deliver on the promise? How do you? I mean, like, what's the success rate, and how do you deal with when it's not? And how do you kind of approach that?
Well, so the first thing I'll say is, like, philosophically, what that is that's what I would call my 10x promise. So my flagship program is a 10x promise, which is to help you, to help you earn at least $10,000 per month from your own flagship from your own flagship product using an advanced attract, nurture, and sell system. So that's my 10x promise. So the first thing I'll just tell you, like, that's what I would call that as my 10x promise. That's one of the first things that I work on with each of my clients is when you're launching a program, it's tempting to pick a safe promise of like, I'm going to teach you how to do stuff, and like, no one says that. No one's sales page says I'm going to teach you how to do stuff, but they basically do if you just swap out some of the words. And one of the things that I find most successful when I have someone who's launching a flagship program where they're charging typically between $2,000 to $10,000 per client for a program that's between 5 to 10 people in it the first time they do it, is that it's tempting to pick a really safe promise, but actually one of the best things you can do for yourself and your client is to make a 10x promise that requires some sort of identity shift. This is something life-changing. If you were a fitness coach, it would be like having a program to get, to get a rock hard 6-pack abs. It's like, that is a bold promise, but what it does is it raises the stakes for everyone. It means that you're only going to attract people who are really, really committed to action, not just financial investment, but actually taking action on what you advise. And it also helps determine the rest of your program, because if you have a promise, then you have to sort of reverse engineer the exact question you just asked, Brian, which is how do you deliver on that? So that's, first of all, just like where that is in my business and what I teach as far as the 10x promise, versus a gateway product has what I would call a 10% promise, where it's something that causes an incremental change or improvement in your life, like lose 5 pounds in 5 days. It's not going to change your life, but it's an interesting way for someone to get started on taking action and to learn from you. So
I noticed that you had an application process for that as well. Like, does that play into, like, are you actually set up for success for this kind of
that's program? Definitely, I'm very selective in who I take into my flagship program. But I say that, but honestly, the primary things I'm looking for are that someone has expertise in their field. Like, if someone... I don't work anymore. I did before, and I learned from that with what I would call passion pivoters, which is like someone who like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with completely pivoting your career path, but I've found that it was really, really difficult for me to help someone build an online education business around a field that they didn't have a lot of expertise in. So somebody who has been, a software developer for 20 years and wants to build a business around like church ministry and prayer, it's like, I've got no moral or theological issue with that shift, but my playbook really works for people who have, the best case scenario is at least a decade, but definitely 5+ years of experience in their industry, that then we can, and I'm primarily teaching them a very simple, a simplified digital marketing system that takes this offline expertise and helps you sell that online.
Yeah, like
so,
you've been an accountant for 20 years, and now you want to really go deeper and maybe help other accountants and really...
Sure, that'd be a great example. Yes. I will say, like, a lot of the people in my current cohort in my program are actually like people who have like email lists and courses and that kind of stuff. And so they're actually getting incredible results, which is awesome. But like the program is really built around like professionals who are like kind of sort of coming online, not, for the first time for the most part. But coming back to your question about like, how do I make sure that happens? The first thing is I actually have a guarantee in my program now. This is relatively new. I mean, I taught this program for about a year and a half before I introduced this, but now it has a 10K or more guarantee, which is that you will, if you show up and do the work, right? It's not magic, but if you show up and do the work, you will earn at least $10,000 from your flagship product during the program itself, which is a 10-week accelerator, or I'll keep coaching you until you do. Now, the first question people ask is like, why is it not a money-back guarantee? And I do money-back guarantees in my other programs, but I toyed with that. But what I found is that for someone to have a total transformation results with the flagship program, they have to be all in. Yep. And if there's a money-back guarantee, it allows someone to keep one foot out the door, and then they don't do some of the hard work, honestly.
Yeah. I also like that because logistically, someone could be completely motivated and really could mean to take action, but life does come up, like unexpected things come up, and so maybe like they can't get it done in the first 10 weeks, but give them another 10 weeks and they can make it happen. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's how I approach it. And then, I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions on that, but that's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Yeah. Hey, just a quick break to tell you about Clarity Flow. It's the software tool loved by coaches and their clients for communicating asynchronously in threaded conversations using video, audio, or text. My team and I designed Clarity Flow for the modern day coach. It lets you give clients a single place to engage with you and all that you offer through your coaching business. Run coaching groups, cohorts, and communities using our Spaces feature. Create interactive courses using our Programs feature. Build your coaching library with templates and reusable content. And sell access to your coaching programs with subscriptions or one-time payments. Customize colors and connect your domain to give clients a fully branded experience. You can use Clarity Flow on the web or our mobile apps for iPhone, iPad, or Android. And connect any other apps using our Zapier integration. Start with a free trial or request a personalized demo and consultation by going to clarityflow.com. I want to get into your story next.
Okay,
but
sure.
Maybe we can like loop back to what your day-to-day looks like running all these different programs and like how you manage your time and energy and schedule and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, you mentioned the software product background. You mentioned working with Michael Hyatt. Like, let's like kind of go back. What do you think are the main steps or milestones in your career before you landed on what you're doing today?
Yeah, so the first steps in my career were I worked for Chick-fil-A for a long time, and I was a training director for Chick-fil-A. And so, like, the next level up is operator and become full-time Chick-fil-A and kind of commit to, like, you just sign, like, it's not even a non-compete. It's like the only way I will ever earn money is by running my own Chick-fil-A franchise. And I knew that wasn't going to work for me. Like, I was like, I love the company. I love working there. But I did always have this, like, theme of, like, training in what I was doing. During this time, I was going to college. I got a degree in economics. I worked for an economics research lab, got my name published in a couple cool papers, was on the PhD track. And then, so again, I've always loved teaching, but I got really fed up with academia. And then I left that, did a couple other jobs while I was figuring things out. And this whole time I was blogging. And I was just sort of blogging about what I was learning. I mean, I was like new to this whole world. I read the book Platform by Michael Hyatt, which came out in, I believe it was 2012. And that was a #1 bestseller. And it was kind of like, in many ways, it was like one of the first books, if not the first book, about this whole world that we all live in right now of like blogs and social media. Like, there's a whole chapter on how to create a Facebook page. So that book I read like on a flight from Nashville to Anchorage, Alaska. And I read the whole book cover to cover and was like, when I landed, I was like, I'm a different person. This is what I'm doing. And so I took my anonymous blog, because up until then I'd have clever names. Like I had a blog called The Open-Minded Economist, and then I had one called Orthodoxy and Liberty, which is the intersection of theology and political thought. Because, like, if one wasn't controversial enough.
Right.
Or complicated enough for
Yeah.
like a young 20-something to be like, don't worry, I will explain both politics and theology.
Yep.
But regardless, then I came out with John and rmeese.com, later johnmeese.me, then johnmeese.com. So there's that whole domain journey as well.
Huh.
So there's a lot going on there. I launched an online course when my wife and I we're at this point a little over a year into marriage. She's pregnant with our first son. We're broke. We're both working, and she wants to take time off and the baby's coming. And I'm like, that's a great idea. How are we going to pay for this? And I'd read about all this stuff. And so I created an online course. I built an email list of 247 email subscribers. And I did a full-on launch sequence as if I had this massive audience. I did exactly what the people who had 10,000 subscribers were doing, but to my 247 subscribers. Mm-hmm. And I made $10,000 in 10 days. And that was my first course launch. And then
What year was this? It was
2014, 2015.
Okay.
I think, it was like right at the cusp of those. Well, actually, I should know that. So my son was born in September 2015. It was before that. Mm-hmm. It's my oldest son. So I'd done some coaching before that, but that's the first time I launched like a digital product. And then I turned around and repeated that launch and did $10,000 again and $10,000 again. And this is while I was making like $25,000 a year at my day job. So that was big money.
Yeah.
So we had more kids. We have 4 boys now. So fast forward a little bit. But I continued to grow my business, and I was doing affiliate marketing and courses and coaching. And then Michael Hyatt reached out to me. If anybody doesn't know him, so he wrote that book I mentioned earlier, but also had a massive, one of the most read blogs on the internet at the time. Massive business, and he had this membership site called Platform University, which is where I was learning a lot of these things about like how to do stuff online. And he invited me out to lunch and said, "Hey, we're really looking for somebody to take over and run Platform University, so I can go do other things." And you're my first choice.
How did you know him before that? Like, how did you guys connect?
I did. Yeah. So we went to church together. So
okay. Cool.
He didn't admit this thankfully, he didn't admit this publicly until like my final like farewell like live stream, which was like 4 years later after we sold the company. Then he mentioned on live stream, thankfully this was the first time, that he's known me since I was in diapers. Thankfully he never said that before then, but he did say that on a live stream in front of thousands of people. But I took over Platform University, and I went from a guy who had this little blog who was making some decent money with like courses and that kind of stuff to John Meese, the dean of Platform University, with a stylist and a video crew, now runs a membership site that does, does millions of dollars a year in revenue with a 6-figure ad budget, a full-time team, and an email list of 100,000 subscribers. Good luck.
Yep.
So that was, I didn't own it, but I did. I met with my supervisor, who is Michael's daughter, Megan. She's the CEO of that company now, Full Focus. I met with her twice a year. And I ran this multi-million-dollar membership with my own team and that kind of stuff. And so it was, that was definitely like it's a huge pivotal moment in my career. There's no way to skip that, because
maybe just to pause on this chapter of your career, right? I think it's interesting because you clearly had an inside look at what really one of like the most well-known, course membership platform coaching programs out there, right? Obviously the scale is different, the numbers are different, much higher budgets, much higher audience size and all that. But what are the main differences between what's happening in that sort of, course coaching membership operation versus something like your business today or your clients' businesses today? Like what's the difference aside from the scale of the numbers?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. So that you're getting into like my like true nerd status, which is I'm like a research geek. And so I love to teach, but I love to also like research and understand patterns. And I was asking the same question because my job was to teach thousands of people how to build online education businesses. And I was working at one of the top online education businesses on the payroll in the planet. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I was paying attention. And actually, even after I left, then I went and I was just exclusively a fractional CMO for online education companies behind the scenes, most of whom were doing millions of dollars a year in revenue. So I got like all this behind the scenes stuff. And what I found was that the difference wasn't, it was scale, of course, but scale can actually hide a lot of inefficiencies. Mm-hmm. Because when you're emailing millions of subscribers or hundreds of thousands of subscribers and you do a bad launch, you still make money.
Right.
And you're like, it worked. And so especially when we sold Platform University to Pete Vargas, and then Grant Cardone literally later bought into that business. When we did that, then I was behind the scenes in these other businesses, and I kept looking for these patterns, and I found that the biggest problem most of them had was it was product confusion. That over time they would create more products, because one product sells, you create another one product sells. And I remember the meeting where Michael Hyatt had a leadership team meeting, and he pulled up the slide deck, and he's like, all right, someone asked me our customer journey. Here's what I got. We have 37 products. Here's the best I can explain our customer journey. And it was a mess. And so we actually killed and combined most of those products into other things, and revenue grew. So then I would go into other products or other companies and find out they were doing really well from a couple core products. But that's actually where the model that I teach now comes out of having gateway, membership, and flagship, is because I would go into a company that was making amazing money off of some flagship program that's a premium program with a 10x promise. And they were making really good money off of gateway products like books and courses, and they didn't have a membership product. And so I'd come in and help them add a membership product, and they'd add 6 figures in recurring revenue immediately. Or I'd come into a company that was all built on gateway and membership, and I'd say, well, you don't have this flagship piece, and we'd add that, and again, they would add multiple 6 figures in revenue immediately. And so now when I'm teaching even someone who's just getting started online, it's just like you have to keep these 3 products in mind. You don't need all 3 products at once. I mean, so like your question was about
like build up to it, but still, you're like really stay focused on these specific products that each serve a specific purpose. Not only for you as the business owner, I think, but also for the customer, right? Like, oh, I just want to like kind of dabble and see what this idea or this person is all about. I'll get the book. I really want to connect with more people who are really on this journey. Let's do the membership.
Exactly.
Like, I'm ready to really commit. Like, let's do the flagship, right? Like
and all the 7-figure schools, like the big online education companies that I worked with behind the scenes, the biggest problems they had was product portfolio. It was like too many products, or the wrong products, or the customers didn't understand the products.
Kind of that like classic Apple thing with Steve Jobs when he came back to Apple. Like the quadrant of like the 4, like 2 personal, 2 professional products, and that's it. Let's kill off everything else.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It's the same idea. Yeah, or similar at least. But yeah, I mean, like that's also where I fell in love with flagship products, because I will say this. We just kind of just touched on the idea of like, yeah, you don't have to have all 3 products at first. I actually recommend you build a flagship product first. Like you don't have to have all 3 at once, but that's something that I think is, I don't know if it's controversial, but it's at least counterintuitive, because most people assume you start with the gateway product. But when I was running Platform University, we were teaching people how to launch these products. I had just, our failure rate was astronomical in terms of people who would sell $50 courses or $7 ebooks, and they would slave away at this and sell 1,000 of them and walk away. They sold 1,000 $7 ebooks, and after a year and a half, they made $7,000, and they give up. And so I refer to that tragedy as the death of 1,000 ebooks. And so now I really focus on helping people sell the flagship product first, because it's the simplest, most effective way to really fund your lifestyle. But that's something that came out of honestly working at these companies where, I mean, I won't do all the math for you, but I'll tell you this: Michael Hyatt's coaching program, which it's essentially shut it down now. They're really focusing on the planner, where he's phasing that out. I think he does some private stuff, but like at its peak, when he had a full-time team attached to it, Business Accelerator, his flagship program, cost $15,000 a year. It was $25,000 if you also met with a one-on-one coach. He had 10 cohorts going at a time, and each cohort had 50 people in it. So 50 times 10 times $25,000 equals a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that was just like massive. And
he had coaches working in those, or was like he personally involved in?
Well, he had a coaching team, but for the first probably 5 or 6 of those cohorts, it was him, and they would meet in person once a quarter for like an intensive. And then in between, they would do like once a month, kind of like a Q&A type call. But most of it was just once a quarter, like, hey, it's intensives week, everybody's here. He then started certifying coaches, and so that's how he scaled kind of probably beyond 5. I think that's when he started introducing certified coaches.
So like teaching. Coaches become certified and become, and it's almost like obviously learning the material and becoming a good coach, but also like kind of transferring the credibility and trust. Like, if people get to know Michael, they need to trust that these coaches that work in the organization have the same certification and background. Exactly. So that's like crazy pants, because there's also a huge team behind that, and so that's like, I would say that's at a level that most creators don't want, because you're really building a corporation. I mean, we had between 50 and 100 full-time employees during that whole season of. I mean, there's multiple products. The Business Accelerator was just one part of the business. The Full Focus Planner actually became
much more of a big deal.
I mean, I like that
Yeah.
like what you talk about is like the similarity is in the product line, right? Like the three products that we were
Yeah.
talking about, right? So like the way that the products work and the marketing, the funnels work and content and newsletters, that's all basically the same between
Yeah.
the massive content businesses out there and the independents, and then just the difference is probably in not only in scale but maybe operations, right? Like either you're totally solo, and then I think there's a middle ground where it's like you're solo and you have a couple of assistants and administrators helping you out, and then you become like a coaching company with other coaches who get certified, and if you want to go that route.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think one of the difference, I sort of touch on this, but I just want to make sure I emphasize it. I think one of the other differences, and this is where people get confused, is just the amount of time they've had to build the machine that they have, like the system of a giant, successful online education company. The Dave Ramsey's, and Dave Ramsey just crossed 1,000 full-time employees, by the way, and so he's also based near here. So so the Dave Ramsey's and the Michael Hyatts and the Pat Flynn's, and all this, just the amount of time they've had, and so a lot of people look at them and they go, okay, I want to be like them, and so I'm going to get on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, launch a coaching program, a course, a book, maybe I'll come out with a planner, and they come out of the gate trying to do what a corporation does.
Right.
And it's just, I think, like Gary Vee also has about 1,000 full-time employees, and it's like people will look at him, they're like, I want to be like Gary Vee, and like, well, okay, you need to find your own version of that, because unless you have 1,000 employees, you can't.
I was just going to say, the solo version of this is still an incredible business.
Oh yeah.
Incredible, like so much better than just being either a freelancer or employed at a job, obviously, right? Like so.
Yeah.
And like I like to think about that in the software world too, where it's like, I'm not trying to be the next like Facebook here, but a small niche product that a lot of people really get a lot of value from, like that's a fantastic business to be in.
Yeah. What, Brian, I think one thing because you mentioned software, that reminded me, I don't know that we need to go into too deep.
Well, I am curious about like where did you enter software? Tell me about that.
So my current company is actually it's my first, but it's also my third. Anyways, it's the company that I've had the longest, my like coaching and training company, but I've actually started and sold two other companies. One was a co-working space company. So that was when I got this harebrained idea that I wanted to go totally into the offline world and open a brick and mortar business on January 15th, 2020, 58 days before lockdown.
Wow.
So that's a whole other story, probably best shared over a hard beverage. But we did actually still grow that company after a lot of challenge and then sell that. So I started and sold a co-working space company. But then software, that really came out of the course that I was creating was helping people with a really complicated WordPress theme. That was really what my first course was about how to use this really complicated WordPress theme that doesn't even exist anymore. It was actually created by Michael Hyatt. It was called the Get Noticed theme. Mm-hmm. And I created this course on how to use his theme because people were so confused, and I don't know, I just spent a lot of time in the dashboard, so I understood how it worked. And it wasn't very intuitive, but I created this whole massive course on how to use it. And then people started asking more questions because they want to be like Michael Hyatt, and I was teaching them how to like just design their website basically, but I'm not a developer. And there was this other guy, Thomas, who was creating custom child themes or custom skins, if you're not familiar with the terminology.
Sure.
I know you probably are, Brian, but I'm just thinking about whoever's listening. But he was creating these custom child themes for the Get Noticed theme. So basically like make it look like Michael Hyatt's website, but like your flavor. Mm-hmm. And he was doing these he just mentioned to me when we were talking one time, he's like, man, like this is so complicated. It would probably just be easier if I just created a new theme. And I was like, well, let's just do that. And so we partnered as business partners, him being the developer, me being the marketing guy. And we created a company originally it was called Notable Themes, later just Notable. And we created really, personalized professional WordPress themes for people who are building online education companies, personal brand businesses. That did pretty well.
What year was that?
It's a good question. We probably first started that maybe 2016. Yeah.
Okay.
It was somewhere in there. Because then, so when I took the Platform University gig, I had to actually exit Notable. That was part of the condition. Because they were like, hey, we sell the Get Noticed theme still. You can't also have a WordPress theme company. I was like, all right, fair. So I exited Notable. And then like 6 months later, Michael was like, hey, by the way, we're sunsetting the Get Noticed theme. We're not going to sell anymore. I was like, gosh, darn it. But that's fine. Because then as soon as we sold Platform University, I went back to my business partner and was like, hey, how's it going? He's like, well, revenue's been the same since you left. So we have MRR, but nothing crazy. Why don't you come back on? So I came back on, helped them grow the business a little bit, and then ultimately we decided to sell it. And so really last year, 2022, is when I sold both the software company and the co-working space company because I wanted to go all in on online education and just focus on that.
Yeah, super interesting. I think our paths have taken like almost like opposite tracks over the years.
Yeah.
You know, I was big into WordPress for several years there. I had my first digital product business, like not including like freelance work, was WordPress themes. This was 2009, I want to say.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember what you were charging for a theme?
Like $59. I think.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical. And
I mean, the feeling of like I was selling like web design services for like thousands of dollars to clients, but the first time I sold a thing for $59 on the internet, I was like ecstatic. I was like, I can't believe a stranger just PayPal'd me $59.
It is pretty cool.
You know.
Yeah.
And then I did a Restaurant Engine, which was like a hosted restaurant thing on WordPress.
Oh, you know what? I actually remember Restaurant Engine, so I'm pretty sure I read your blog or something
Yeah.
at some point. So even though we just reconnected,
Back in the day,
actually,
yeah.
when you said Restaurant Engine, I'm like, wait a minute, I've read about this.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Yeah.
And you know, WordPress itself has been on like this rocket ship forever now, but like
Yeah.
it's gone through these different phases where, especially I think in like 08, 09, 010, like the themes companies were just getting like really big, and then and I was sort of on the tail end of that, and then like later and now like things just kind of got like astronomical, but competition as well. So
Well, and one of the things I think we did really well, there's plenty of things we didn't do well, but one of the things I think we did really well with Notable was we ended up, Sunset, we had like a bunch of themes at first, and we really focused on one called Notable Press, which it was just a super powered premium WordPress theme on top of WordPress. But we wouldn't even mention WordPress except for in the FAQs. You know, we would just sell this $1,000 a year website builder.
Yeah. I remember, we're going on a total sidetrack here, of course, but that was the thing with Restaurant Engine, you know, because at the time I was selling WordPress themes, which was like for WordPress users who just want a theme for their WordPress. They know all about hosting and what a theme is. But I was like, there are all these restaurant owners and other industries that have no idea and don't care that it's WordPress. So let's just give them a website and hook up the hosting and everything, and we can customize that.
Okay, that's essentially what we did with Notable Press. So that's awesome.
Nice. Okay, so like getting back to, I guess, closer to today. So I am curious about the move. I guess last year in 2022, you said you exited the WordPress themes and like the software side to go all in on what you're doing today with the courses and membership and newsletter. Tell me about that decision to go in that direction in your career as an entrepreneur. Was it like, what is more attractive to you about this path today than continuing to pursue something like software or something else?
Yeah, well, I found out something really surprising when I was running 3 companies at once, which is it's 3 times as much work. And perhaps I should have seen that coming. But I came pretty dangerously close to burnout when I was running and all the companies were profitable at this point. I have a software company, coaching company, and I wasn't doing a lot of coaching. It was more like, I guess, courses and a little bit of consulting. But I shouldn't say that. I was doing a few high-ticket consulting clients, and then some courses and that kind of stuff. So, and then between the co-working space, the software company, and the coaching company, you know, it's just too much. And so I had to look at that and be like, this just, I can't do this. I can't. And I tried to actually bring them all under one parent company. Like, I actually went down that path first of like, okay, maybe these are actually maybe they fit the same universe. They don't. I discovered especially because I had different business partners and the only one that didn't have any business partners is my core coaching company. The other one I had business partners in each position, and that kind of just complicated things. So I then I had to do some soul searching about, like, you know, essentially what do I want to do when I grow up at this point. So my book Survive and Thrive came out of that phase where that's actually probably, I guess I can't say the last because I don't know what the future holds, but right now the book itself is an entrepreneurship 101 book that's not specific to online education, which doesn't really make sense in my current business model. I mean, one of the, you know, people have sent me messages about how life-changing it was who run like pest control companies or you know, completely other things. It's also, everything I wrote in there applies to online education businesses, but at the time I was running a co-working space company and we'd gotten a grant to become an entrepreneur center for Tennessee, and like there was all kinds of other stuff of helping small business owners in there, and then 2020 hit. So that book was part of me exploring what I want to do with when I grow up, but also trying to capture what I'd learned building 3 companies, bootstrapping 3 companies from scratch. So I interviewed, that's also one of my podcasts came out during that time, because I interviewed some of the best and brightest minds in business, people like Michael Hyatt, Ray Edwards, Pat Flynn, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, Mike Michalowicz, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just looking for the common models of like, in response to all this global change, like how do you thrive as an entrepreneur? And that's really what became that book. But it was also a bit of me exploring like really asking them for the sake of the book, but also for me of like, yeah, but how do I actually do this? How do I pick who my target customer is? How do I pick a lane? Because I knew entrepreneurship at this point. I was spoiled that I wasn't going back to like a job, but I had a lot of hangups, honestly, around being a guy. I'm sure you've heard it, like, a guy who creates courses about how to create courses. Sure. Like I didn't want to be that guy. There's just so much. Once you've been in the online education space for a while, there's so much just kind of like trash talk about meta creators, basically. Like they're like, sure. Oh, well, that guy did, he has a podcast about how to do podcasts, or he has a course on how to do a course, or he has a coaching program about how to do coaching programs.
I think there's like two sides to that coin. Like obviously we all hear it, but at the end of the day, like you clearly see it as probably many other people do. There are a lot of people who get a ton of value from learning what these possibilities are. I mean, I often like to think about all of my friends and family who are not in this online world with me, who many of them have no idea what I do for a living. All they know is that I'm on the computer a lot. But a lot of them, like my brother is a farmer. He has a farm with
that's wonderful.
With like 50 cows. They do milk, yogurt, cheese. Like it's incredible. And this guy knows it's insane how much expertise he has in the organic farming world, right? And he's like dabbled on YouTube and stuff, but like I look at that, I'm like, there is such a larger business here than just selling the milk, like
yes.
there is so much expertise there between teaching or selling tools or software to folks like you, but yeah, like there are so many people like that who need to sort of like learn to connect these dots online if they want to go that route,
Well, and that's actually what got me over my own ego, I guess, and my own fear of being like a meta creator, essentially, was really just like talking to people who are really smart, who were not teaching online, and just like didn't make sense to me. And I realized, and I actually had to get in touch with the tragedy a bit of like the tragedy today, the tragedy that I'm trying to prevent. There's plenty of tragedies, but the one that I'm focused on is
can't do everything.
Yeah, I can't do everything. Is that there are incredibly smart professionals right now who've spent decades behind closed doors honing their expertise, helping transform people's lives one-on-one. And tomorrow, one of them's going to have a heart attack and die, having never written down or shared anything that he taught behind closed doors. And all that wisdom is lost. And the rest of us are left grasping in the dark, trying to recreate the wheel.
Yep.
And that gets me upset. And so that's also why when I kind of recommitted to helping people build online education businesses, I really shed my focus of like helping, like I'm a digital marketer, but I never say that. Like I really shed a lot of the digital marketing language and started just trying to rebrand and refocus everything I do around helping people sell their smarts, to turn their wisdom into wealth. Really just concepts that people could latch onto even if they've never heard of ClickFunnels. And so that's something that then I got really fired up about it, and then I didn't really care anymore what people thought. I just went and did it, and that's been really great. It's been a great transition.
That was really well said. We'll start to wrap it up here, but I am curious about how. Okay, so like you've chosen this path, like that's your mission, like you're motivated by it. I could hear and see like you have this drive behind what you do. How do you make it work logistically? For example, for myself.
Oh, sure.
A couple of years back, like I sold a course called Productize, and I had a bit of a community there and stuff, and I was doing a lot more content and newsletters. But I personally lost the energy to keep churning out content and video courses and stuff like that. I'm much more comfortable in like the quiet, deep work, software kind of stuff. How do you manage your energy in this type of business, which requires, a lot of talking to people, group coaching sessions, managing launches, doing content on a regular basis? How do you make it all work?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad you mentioned Productize, because I'm just having like a total flashback moment. It's hard to remember anything pre-2020. I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's like this totally. But you just kind of reopened a memory for me which is that you're the reason why I shifted from selling one-on-one coaching to a retainer model, is that you had this product, and I think you had a blog or something around this whole idea of productizing your service, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just now connecting the dots in my head that happened, and that was you. So that was probably what planted the seed for now. What I teach about stop selling time is probably planted by your whole productize your service thing. So thank you.
That's incredible. I mean, it really wasn't. It was somewhat known, but it was not on a level of the the Pat Flynn's and the Michael Hyatts of the world.
Oh no, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter. It had an impact on me, and so thank you. And so that's also why I love online education businesses, is because so there's a guy, Alex Sanfilippo, who owns Podmatch, which is it pairs like guests and hosts in the podcasting world. And I think I met him recently, and then in our conversation, he was like, 10 years ago, you wrote a blog post that changed my life. I was like, what?
Yeah, isn't that incredible?
He's like, literally, this company exists because you changed how I think about entrepreneurship. And
wow.
Yeah. So yes, those kind of things. So thank you, Brian. But then I want to answer your question, but I also just want to say thank you. So I do a few things. I mean, the first thing I do is while I have the quote laptop lifestyle, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so I have boundaries.
I'm pretty boring that way too. Like everyone likes these like weird schedules. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like Monday to Friday. That kind of just works for me.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 tends to work. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I'm like working on like a book project or something like that, an early Saturday morning when everybody is offline and is not bugging you is awesome.
Yep.
And so I do get some focus work in there sometimes. But generally,
national holidays are like my favorite because that's when I'm working.
I love working on national holidays. I get so much done. I'm so glad we connect on that. I also don't take meetings before noon. So because I am still a writer, and so I do have deep work that I need to do all the time. Sometimes it's responding to coaching clients. Sometimes it's we're working on a newsletter or some sort of deep work project. I don't take meetings before noon, which means I have a good 3 hours, a half day of deep work every day. Mm-hmm. And then most of my meetings then are batched in the afternoon. So I take like 2 or 3 meetings, each day, and not every day. But can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I got alert that my mic was maybe disconnected.
No, it's all good.
So okay, let me kind of backtrack for a second. Lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Yeah. So you have like about 2 or 3 calls a day, if that, and then you've got like some deep work in the morning. And, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I mean, that's yeah. And so honestly, right now, we live I have an office outside of the home. I also don't work from home. So like I'm a laptop lifestyle, work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, never at home. Partly because I have 4 children who I love and hate telling them daddy's working.
Yep.
And so I made that choice a long time ago. There was a whole period actually of a couple of years where we actually didn't have internet at home. We've graduated beyond that. Our kids are really into the internet, and so, but I bike to work. Actually, I bike 1.6 miles to my office.
Great.
And then I can focus here. And then when I'm home, I'm home. When I'm at work, I'm at work.
I miss that separation. I used to have an office, and then we moved to this house, and now I'm here like all the time. And now I break out to Starbucks maybe 3 times a week. That's about it.
I totally get that. No, and it's not always possible. We were just in Puerto Rico for 9 months, and the house we bought had a home office, and there wasn't really a great office space nearby, and so I worked from home for a while, but I was reminded of like all the downsides of it, of just like not having clear, even just like a commute.
And like, how about your team? Like, it's you producing a lot of content. Like, how are you doing it like operationally?
Totally. So I don't have any employees, but I do have several contractors that I work with. Mm-hmm. I recently hired an OBM, so an online business manager, and so he's working for me right now 10 hours a week, and he helps kind of project manage, and so we meet, kind of set the big picture vision for whatever we're working on, and then he helps manage that with the other contractors. That's still new to me, but that's amazing in terms of how much it's taken me out of the weeds, because I started to accumulate contractors. I have an illustrator. I hire an illustrator who normally does the New Yorker to do my newsletter every week. And
I love this model. There are so many like threads that we can pull on and have like an entire podcast episode about, but I've been doing this for years in all of my different businesses where, I have some like full-time team members now who are just on all the time, but the idea of working with high caliber contractors for a day or 2 a week or on an as needed basis is huge,
Oh yeah.
And that's what like the economy, at least on the internet, is working these days, right? Like it's just like whether it's marketing, illustration, even developers or something like most of the best people you can't afford on a full-time salary because they're just too good, too much of a track record. But and also a lot of them don't even want a full-time salary. They want to be working with a couple of really good clients. So if you can just be one of those great clients for them, it's such a great model.
Well, yes, and we could totally talk about that another time. But just to kind of one factoid on it, I have to share is that because I know just like you that like in our like online world, it's like the norm is like having this kind of flexible team with contractors and specialists. What I didn't know until recently was that 50% of college graduates are going 1099 instead of W-2 in the U.S., which means it's like half of college graduates are going into some sort of freelance business, and so we're not at the point where like half the workforce is a freelancer. But when you think about graduates are setting the tone for the next couple decades of the industry, then I think that's only going to continue.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, so I have a couple other contractors I work with for different things. I have one now certified coach. I don't have a certification program. I just started calling her that because after a year, she's been my co-host on like all of my coaching calls, and like she's helped me like she does some one-on-one when people are really stuck, and I'm like, Annette, can you go help them? Mm-hmm. So I just recently started introducing her as like my certified coach, but like I don't have a certification program. It's just she's been with me through all my stuff.
But it's interesting, and again, that's another thread that we can probably do a whole episode on. But like that transition from because usually that's almost like the fundamental problem with a business like this is that it's too much of you. It's like your name and everything, but that is how you transfer that like trust, equity, and grow beyond just you as the name to an actual like company and brand and certified coaches and all that.
Exactly.
That's an interesting process.
Yeah. So it's a summary version.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we covered so much ground here. We are going to have to do probably a couple follow-up episodes at some point.
Let's do it.
So johnmeese.com. I mean, is that the best place for folks to connect with you?
That's plenty fine. You can go there, but I would say this new crash course that I put together is my best and newest content. So you can get it there, but if you go to sellyoursmartsonline.com, that'll take you straight there just to get that crash course. It's 100% free. You already have heard me talk about it. It does introduce some of my other products and just kind of give you a little bit of a tour of not only what I teach, like the core concepts and how to apply them, but also some different ways that you can get my help to achieve those things. We didn't even talk about Group Coach Bootcamp. That's probably another episode.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we'll get all this stuff linked up in the show notes. John, great to connect with you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right.
Keep up the good work.